Good evening and welcome to the September 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 2 is public participation. Since there are no members of the public present, we will close public participation. And we will go on to item number 3, which is the introduction of the student representative to the school board. So welcome, Joanna Caroma. Did I do that right? Excellent. If I'd like to introduce you now, to just use your mic. If I forgot, just press the button. It glows up. If you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. And welcome. We look forward to having you for the school year.
Hi, I'm Johanna Caroma. I'm a senior at Merrimack High School. I play volleyball and track and field, and I'm really excited for this opportunity. So thank you all for having me here.
Welcome. And thank you again, Johanna. I'm going to do that better. So, it's a beautiful name. So we are on to item number 4, which is summer instructional initiatives, and I will turn the mic over to John Fabrizio. Cozy. We have cozy quarters tonight, so.
Thank you. I just wanted to, before I start, this is all about our summer 2019. And you'll see up here, I prepared a little PowerPoint today that doesn't have a lot of information on it, but much more about to paint a picture of really what goes on and the planning behind running all the summer initiatives that we have going on in our district. It's very interesting, as I've been in district for a few years now, and I've watched our programming grow over the time that I've been here, and I've been lucky enough to be involved in most of these initiatives as they've happened, and so I feel that I kind of have a nice overview of them to lay out tonight for you, and opportunity to ask some questions. But I'll go ahead and talk about some numbers that we have of kids that are involved, what different programs they're involved in, and kind of talk about the amount of teams that have to go into this. Everything you'll see here involves our administrative team, our language arts coordinators, our special ed coordinators, the teachers for our that have our students at the elementary level and students with disabilities, our teachers at the middle school who have students who may just need that little extra boost, and our teachers at the high school that may have to help students who have to recover some credits. So it's really a collective district effort to make happen what you'll see tonight. So I'll start off. So it starts with our extended year program, our ESY, you'll call it, or summer school, you hear sometimes. So why do students attend ESY? Sometimes it's about the skills they need. They're really skills that need year-long training on there. And these are often skills of motor function that you'll see. Kids who need to learn to, simply hold a pencil or use a spoon to eat, things like that are more severe disabilities that we really need to work with them a little more over the summer. Often it happens with a degree of progress they've made. Some kids all learn at different paces, and sometimes we need just a little bit longer to pace out that learning for our students. So we invite them to come to our extended school year to work with them. Emerging skills, breakthrough opportunities. They're getting it. They're really working hard. We think that a little more in summer, we can really boost them. We can take a student who may have really a good foundation of understanding letters and symbols, but can't put it all together to read. And with 6 more weeks, we may get there. So we'll take a child and we'll put them through ESY. Regression. Some students need, especially with some of our motor abilities or some of our cognitive abilities, sometimes kids will regress if they don't have sustained ability. You often see this in some of our behavior programming and students who may need just a little bit more and a little consistent programming throughout the year to maintain their skills and maintain their ability to learn appropriate behavior sometimes, and we'll do that. And nature, severity, disability, some of our more severe multi-disabled students or our students who are sometimes here till 21, we'll offer ESY to give them opportunities, some job opportunities, some things like that over the summer to keep them engaged. And then there's also always, in the world of student with disabilities, those special mitigating factors or circumstances that pop up, and sometimes those are for health reasons. Sometimes students are absent a lot and can't maintain the full school year 180 days in a row, and we'll sometimes use ESY to continue our programming for them for the year. So that's kind of the why behind it. And now the numbers. These are important. So at the high school, we had 25 students this year. At the middle school, 59. At Reed's Ferry, we had 135 for our pre-K to 4 program. So it's a total of 219 students in our program just for ESY. That's a good portion of our students. That's about for our students who are identified with disabilities. That's about a third really of our students that come in. Third or three-quarter.
I'm raising my hand to myself.
Sure.
I'm not seeing J Muse represented.
Okay. Let me explain them.
Okay, good.
So we have 3 programs, 3 distinct programs, and there's 3 coordinators. Nancy Romero is our elementary coordinator. Our middle school coordinator is Susan Wheeler, and our high school coordinator is Christine Reinhardt. And so we only have 3 different programs. We have a pre-K to 4 program. We have a 5, 6, 7, 8 program, and then we have basically freshman year through 21 programs. So there's 3 programs that we in 3 different buildings throughout the district.
Thank you for the clarifier.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for the question. So you'll see those are our numbers, and then this takes a lot of staff members and a lot of planning. As I said, we're planning ESY for students all year round. So today, somewhere in the district, a meeting was held on the first day of school and for an IEP. And the question may have been asked, does this student qualify for ESY? And you have to make a determination. Often, if it's this early in the year, we hold the determination later in the year, but it is asked every single day. And that begins the planning. It starts, okay, this student is coming to ESY. What are their services? What do they need? And that all comes into kind of a big math problem. You know what I mean? How many speech and language pathologists do we need? Well, how many hours of service can they do in a week? Well, by that number of hours of service, you're determining how many people you need. And that comes down to basically 89 staff members total for our district, for our teaching staff and paraeducators. And then also of our speech, OT, PT, our behavior people, our nursing, our vision, our reading specialist, you have another 20 people. So you're talking, about 109 people that support 219 students in our ESY program. So then we have our next program is our summer reading program. And these are students in our summer reading program that really K through 6th grade, and we invited 7th graders this year too, although none came, we did invite them. And these are students who are below grade level in reading. And we've made a concentrated effort to say we really want to help kids improve in this district. And this is somewhat unique to Merrimack, and this is something, a self-created program that's been around for a long time now, prior to dating me when I was a principal of Master Cola. And I think that we really try to look at teacher recommendation, the reading specialist recommendation, and some STAR assessments. And we look at those and we say the combination of those, we decide if students should come and be invited to have an opportunity for 6 weeks to learn a little more and improve their skills. Each student pays a tuition of $15. And our class sizes range from about 8 to 15 students in each class. And then parents at the end of the year fill out a survey, and we ask how and we continue to look at that data, and we have had very positive results. Deb Fournier is our director this year. She did an amazing job organizing things, and as you'll see, we had 88 students attend this year, 8 teachers and 11 paraeducators for our summer reading program. So again, there's another 88 students on top of what we talked about for our ESY program too. So there's a lot of students. And again, this is involving, as I said, our elementary teachers, K through 6, making recommendations on kids, our reading specialists tracking the data throughout the year, and then making a recommendation. And then our high school, which is Ron DeLute is our director. And Ron did a nice job. I asked Ron a lot, but out of the programs that I was probably familiar with is really the 8.5 the most, and I had to learn a little about credit recovery. So I had a nice conversation with Ron this week and exchanged a couple emails. So we had 60 students enrolled in our 8.5 program. And really what this is really there's 90-minute classes each day. And then 60-minute session for students with the school counselor each day to do some of the things that we talk about: team building, we talk about social emotional learning, we talk about adjusting, we talk about building kids' ability to adapt and their resiliency and all those things. And that's kind of how we help this group of students, these 60 students that maybe after middle school needed a little more and needed some help. And this is kind of an opportunity to make that happen over the summer. There's no charge for our 8.5 program. We transport the students, and they also do a field trip together, a culminating field trip together. We try to make it a positive experience for them, where they come in ready for high school. So 4 teachers, 4 paraprofessionals, and a guidance counselor on our 8.5 program. Then the other part of our high school institute in the summer is our credit recovery program. And there are 48 students enrolled this year. They have 2 130-minute classes each day. Students pay $150 to be able to attend. And they earn a half credit for each course they've successfully completed throughout the summer. And there's also students that have an asterisk, which means they have to make up a competency. And those are $50 per student, and students are able to work again in those 130-minute sessions and be able to earn that credit they need. There's 5 teachers and 4 paraprofessionals in the credit recovery program. So that, in essence, is our summer work that a lot goes into.
I saw hands. I saw Cinda first.
Can you tell me a little bit about why we charge for the 2 last programs? If you could flip this slide back, that would be helpful. The high school programs. Why are we charging for high school programs?
Those are the philosophy behind it, and I'll turn to Mark to give a little more of this too, but the philosophy behind it, from our understanding, is really these are students that had the opportunity to earn credit and didn't. And so it's an opportunity, it's another opportunity and it's paid for them to do that.
What I would say is that the rationale behind it is, as John was alluding to, students have to feel a little skin in the game. They had an opportunity to engage, and there's a sort of a thought, could be agreed or disagreed. We're not the only district that does that when a student and a family have a commitment, nominal for the fact that they're getting a credit, but nevertheless, that there might be some more ownership and participation so that they really earn the credit that they get. So that's something certainly we can discuss in the future, but that has been the philosophy that's kind of energized that program in the past. And it has to do a lot with how much do you want this? And you had one chance, we're offering you another chance, and it's, we have to pay the teachers. And so maybe you need to participate a little bit in your credit recovery.
Okay.
That's the philosophy.
Yeah. What I'd like to suggest is, I know that you're looking and working as a priority this year, administration is, on our graduation rates and some of those related areas. And so I'd like to request we revisit this at that time when we kind of look at the overall strategy for our district and how we support our kids to better find ways to support their learning, match their learning, and there's always room for improvement there. I think we all agree there. And and how this might play into it, or how that would fit into the overall strategy. That's what I'd like to request.
Sure.
And if I could just follow on to that, I believe Evening Academy also has tuition requirements to it. And again, if that could be impacting it, because again, it's all about those that have the means to do so will take the advantage. And if we haven't identified those without, we know that, we work hard to do that, but we're not always 100% successful, that people would not necessarily step up in a credit recovery. And, what could be those external circumstances that could cause them to fall behind. Maybe they are holding a job to help the household, whatever the case may be. So, I'd hate to think of having to vet all the circumstances. And I know I'm thinking out loud more than anything else, but, I would hate to put a dividing line based on ability to pay.
Yeah, it just raises a red flag for me. I mean, just at glance. So,
Okay.
No, happy to do it.
thank you.
Are there any other questions? On that? No? Oh, Mark, absolutely.
So I just wanted to, I should have,
Expect a question from you, though.
no, not a question, just a comment. I should have actually said this at the beginning. So there's a theme to tonight, and that is to try to describe for the board and the community all of the activity that happens in this school district in the summer. Summer is our least sleepy time. This is a district that is fully engaged and working very hard to support students and to maintain, as Matt will speak to in a minute, maintain our facilities. So part of the thing that we wanted to just make sure that we share with you is that that summer, contrary to what some might think, is actually one of the busiest times in our district, and wanted to try to present that to you with some facts about the programming that we have. So for the rest of the night, you'll see some examples of that. And I would just point out that when John refers to 8.5, some of you here and some people in the community might remember Springboard to Success. This is a latter-day version of Springboard to Success, which is really intended, that's why it's now called 8.5. It's really intended to support students transitioning from the middle school to the high school to make sure that they are optimized for success. And sometimes the way that happens is that they are physically in the high school, they get to see the high school, they get to have it laid out for them, they know where the bathrooms are, they know kind of who the teachers are, they have a sense of the size of the building so that the transition isn't quite so shocking, and also to provide some academic supports. So if you're wondering, 8.5, I hadn't heard of it, it's not a glamorous name, but it is, the best way to think about it is what used to be Springboard. So there's that.
Thank you. On that note, we will go on to item number 5, which is the overview of school district summer construction projects, and I turn it over to Matt.
I look good up there? It's all that matters, that I look good up there. So I can see my slides.
Sorry, 1 second, please.
Just a,
Figured we share.
Just when we get used to one
Computer.
technology, we go to a different room with different technology, so.
I'm just admiring his tie.
I am loving the tie.
I like it. I like his tie.
So while we're stalling, but we're reflecting. So John is wearing a tie that has school buses with giant stop signs on them,
Yes.
apples. And it's perfect for the first day of school, and a good reminder that when you see a school bus and it has a stop sign, to stop.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, in my comments, I was going to say thank you to the Merrimack Police Department for
Yeah.
the back-to-school safety messages today
Yeah.
that went out on Nixle. So, we bought you a little bit of time, but I don't know if you needed all of it. Are you ready to go? Okay,
Oh, one of those stop signs is from Old Blood Road.
there you go.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Opportunist.
There you go.
Turn around and look at the slide as you go through.
Question is, can it pipe through?
I think 1
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
Let's see if the man behind the curtain can.
It's just not coming there. I have it here, but it's
So.
not coming there.
Oh, it's not,
No, it's not moving. Look.
Basically, it's running on his laptop, but not on the screen. Oh, there it goes.
There it goes. I got
There
it.
it goes? You got it?
I got it.
All
There you
right.
go.
Really good.
You willed it to happen. Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah. See, sometimes the mere effort of just asking for help will make it work miraculously, so. Yeah. So this is the, John had a lot going on this summer as far as the educational aspect. And you know from passing the budgets and various warrant articles that we also had a lot going on this summer. And part of those are the summer construction projects, or I like to say what we did on our summer vacation. When people meet me and they find out what I do for a living, they said, "Oh, so you have summers off, right? Isn't that nice?" No, I don't have summers off. Summers is the most intense time for us, and especially this summer with the infrastructure improvements that were passed in the budget and passed via warrant article that were each and every one of them. I'm going to talk about 4 of them that were major. Each and every one was required to maintain our current infrastructure at the level that we're accustomed to. Because you can go through these schools and you can look at them, and I'll go through square footage and everything like that, but you know, some of these schools, the upper elementary schools built in 1949, had an addition in 1953, 1956, 1958, 1972, 1997, and 2003. So a lot of your buildings, instead of being a single structure built at a given time, it was addition after addition after addition. It takes a little bit of extra effort to integrate all those additions into one cohesive unit. And then it takes a lot of maintenance to be done to that infrastructure to make the piece that was built in 1949 look like the piece that was built 10 years ago. And when you go through our schools, you see how clean they are, you see how well kept they are, you see the fantastic, phenomenal job that the custodians do over the summertime, and I'll get in that later. But I just want to go over the summer construction projects. We had a boiler at MES, as you recall. We had a switchgear and a transformer at the high school. So we had to shut the power down to most of the high school for a couple of weeks, thus impacting some of the programs that John had going on over there. We had parking and drainage at Mastercole Elementary School, and we had a parking lot at parking and drainage at Mastercole Elementary School, and parking at the upper elementary school. And we added a couple of features to those last two to provide a visible entrance to the building, because before it was just asphalt, have fun finding the door. And now there's a brick walkway going to the entrance to J. Muse and to Mastercole Elementary School that gives the entrance a sense of presence, and it kind of shows you where you need to be. We did some stuff with lighting too, but I'm not going to get into that. And we may do some more with signage, but we'll see how that plays out over the year. So the first one we had is the Master Elementary School boiler replacement. We had boilers that were 35, 40 years old. And so if one of them went down, you'd probably have to close school. There was 2 of them in there. What we did is we went with a system that basically has 4 units, and they're all chained together in an array with 2 boilers in each unit. So you basically have 8 boilers where there were 2. And when you do that, if one boiler were to go down, the other 7 can take over the school. You could lose maybe 3 of these boilers and still have heat in the school on the coldest day. The boilers that we have brand new kick out 4 million BTUs to heat that school. And this was a project that started pretty close after school ended. When we got in there, you're seeing all the piping and everything that had to be done. and took pretty much the entire summer. You can see, here's the units that are stacked up. I'm not sure how far you can see in there, but there are actually 4 big cases with 2 boilers in each. Here's another picture of it, pretty much complete. And here's the 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're by Bosch. They're especially made to work with natural gas, seeing we have natural gas in that school. So they were converted over to make the most efficient use of NG as opposed to our old boilers that were there. And they will be redundant, and they will offer us security, and a sense of security and peace of mind going into the winter months, because we weren't sure how long those existing boilers were going to last. So this is something that definitely needed to be done, and it was in the operating budget, and we're glad it was finished. But it was up until the day before school. Now, when we moved to the high school, we have something that we talked about before, and then we put in the operating budget for the transformer. The switchgear came out of the last year's budget. It's kind of a 2-budget cycle. So this is the entrance to the switchgear, and this is the room where the switchgear was in, and the old switchgear is gone. And they're trenching in from the outside because this was like a many-headed hydra of going through it. We hired an electrical engineer to work with the state fire marshal to come up with a set of stamped plans and to design everything. And when we went into the initial design, what we had found out is we had to run all new conduit in there and new cable. And so we had to go from Transformer 1, which is where the entrance to special ed is in the front of the school, trench to the new transformer around the corner, and then go into that room where the switchgear is. Now I don't often bring props, but I have a prop. This wire is from Texas, and it's big and heavy because it's from Texas. And it was designed by the engineer, and this kind of delayed the project just a little bit at the end. Custom Electric was the GC on the job, and they pulled 36 of these all the way from the front of the building into the second transformer and then underneath the slab. I just want to pass it around to so you can get an idea of the heft of that piece of cable. Bless you. Came on a big flatbed truck, huge spools of this stuff, and it was exceedingly heavy, and there's lots of copper in there because there's 4,000 volts going through that switchgear. So that project was done just about on time, in time for the start of school, but you could hang on to that as a souvenir if you want. It could be a memento of your first meeting, right? No? Okay. Anyway, this is the interior of the switchgear right now before it was installed. And then this is some of the exterior of the switchgear with its individual breakers. We used to have a big green box that had this big steel metal pole coming out of it, that when the thing would trip, you would take it and you would crank it down in order to get it to engage, and you had to put a lot of force on it, and when it got close, it would just engage with a loud thud, and you knew you were up and back and running. Well, we found out last year that after we had Custom Electric come and look at it, because it wasn't engaging, we couldn't get it engaged. We were trying to stand on the thing to get it to engage, couldn't get it to engage. So Custom Electric came by and said, "You guys are doing this yourselves?" And we're saying, "Yeah." They said, you don't do that anymore. because this is not something you should be handling as an individual without protective gear. So they went in there, they repaired it just enough so it would work and be operational, but that's what started the whole switchgear momentum, that it had to be replaced. It was a Federal Pacific brand model, which lost its UL rating years ago. And this switchgear right here is Square D, which is one of the better, probably the best. I would probably say the best. There wasn't that much of a price difference between Square D and like a General Electric or something like that, but these are just better. So this is what was spec'd out in the engineer's drawings, and with the approval of the fire department and the state fire marshal, who had to approve all these drawings, everything stamped. So that was our switchgear. And you could see the room behind the switchgear that we had to have for access, because it actually kind of flipped around. The next item we have, I see coming up, is there any questions on switchgear? I don't want to just ramble through this real quick, but I'll just, yeah. It's a nice slideshow. Pictures are good.
Mark?
Matt, could you just remind people, just back to the Master Cola boiler, how old was that boiler that was replaced?
I thought it was at least 35, 40 years old.
And what's the life expectancy typically of such a boiler?
35, 40 years
About,
old.
so it
yeah.
was at its life end, but it was maintained up
It was
through, so-
maintained. What we do, and you know because you've met with them here, we have a maintenance contract with Honeywell, and they maintain all our mechanical equipments, our boilers, our pumps, our switches, everything like that. So they change, maintenance changes filters and everything like that, but Honeywell maintains the infrastructure. So it was under their advice too, in looking at the core of the boiler, that enough corrosion over the years has happened that something's going to let go. So they wouldn't guarantee it anymore. But they do maintain it, they clean it, they you know, everything has been maintained. That's why it lasts so long.
And on that boiler note, I was going to ask, but since we're on that topic, I know that, you know, we talked about, you know, if we've always been trying to gain efficiencies, converting to natural gas, etc. And something you said earlier, and I think that you're going to tell me what I think I'm thinking, and that is, if we can run on 5 boilers, why would we have 8? And it's about longevity of the equipment by having
Absolutely.
the workload be spread, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because you need to run that building at the optimal level of efficiency. You need 8 boilers running 4 million BTUs. You can get away with less, but that will keep your school warm enough. But when you start getting down to the minus 20 below 0 days, that they do happen here every once in a while, and I can't open my car door, and I'm like there, okay, what am I going to do now? And get the hair dryer, but that doesn't work. So anyway, but that's my problem. So anyway, yeah, so that's the reason why we have the 8, because there's redundancy, and you don't have to worry. If you build right to the edge of your capacity to fail and don't give yourself any room, then if it goes out, you're done. You don't have school.
Right.
And that can be catastrophic. It can replace something like this, could take a month. So you wouldn't have school for a month in the wintertime at Master Cola Elementary School. Now, what do you do then? So if we don't keep these maintained and we don't stay on top of them and we don't plan for redundancy, then we face that decision. And that's a bad business decision, and that's a bad educational decision too, because now you have a whole grouping of students we have to figure out. John has to figure out, and Mark has to figure out what to do with and how to educate them and how to transport them and where they go, because the building wouldn't be available.
Fair.
So that's why we went with what we went.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Next item. Now, this has to be one of my personal favorites. I bet you can't guess what it is, though. Yes! Master Cola Elementary School parking lot. This is what it looked like at first. You notice to the top of your screen is the entrance to the Smith Gym. See the curbing in front of it? The,
Can't see it if you're in here.
oh, there we go. I like this too. See the curbing in front of it? That means it's not ADA accessible. The front of to the right of the slide, if you keep going over that way, that's the old entrance to the main office. That has curbing too. It was not ADA accessible. The pitch of that parking lot went from where that sidewalk is in front of the Smith Gym, and it went down at an angle. Then it created a nice dish where all the water would collect, and you'd have, yeah, the bowl. I heard a story of a teacher who went to get in her car, and the water was up to the bottom of her SUV because the drainage wasn't going anywhere, and her boots got filled with water, and it wasn't a happy day, and that's not good. Plus, you look at everything, it's all cracked and everything like that. It looked hideous. It was not performing up to expectations as far as the drainage goes, as far as the pitch of the parking lot goes, as far as the design goes, as far as the ADA accessibility goes. It was time. And luckily, the voters passed $325,000 in a warrant article to take this thing and rip it up and redo it, because this is not something you can do an overlay, because there's stuff underneath the ground. You have pipes going every which way that were put there with no drawings, no specifications, and it was a mystery to try and solve. So what did we do? We got the toys out and we ripped it all apart. So we ripped everything apart in this parking lot, tore all the tar out, everything like that, brought it down to sand. Here's the rest of it. All the asphalt is done. Then we started digging around. We started looking for pipes, because there's a little apparatus you can buy. I'm not going to buy it, but the CSSI, who's the contractor on this, had to put a wand down there and see where the pipes were. Some of them were sewer pipes, some of them were water pipes. Some of them were water pipes coming in, some of them were water pipes that carried the roof drains out into the stormwater system. And at some point in time, the sewer pipes and the stormwater pipes were conjoined, and the stormwater and the sewer was mixed together going down the sewer pipe, so it was overloading the wastewater treatment plant. So that's something we talked about with the town a long time ago. So if we ever had the opportunity to dig this parking lot up, we were going to try and solve the mystery of what was connected to what and separate it. So the sewer goes where the sewer should go, and the stormwater from the parking lot and from the roof drains goes where it should go. So that was the beginning of the dig over here. So we got everything all dug up. We exposed a goodly portion of this. That area right there where you see where the structure is, the cement structure, there was another one there that no one knew was there, and it had 7 pipes going into it. And I'd like to thank Mike Dumais for standing up on the roof of one of the buildings with a hose, filling up a roof drain, waiting for 30 minutes to figure out where is the water going, you know? And then we finally figured out there was an actual holding tank, like a big cistern underneath, right in front of the Smith Gym, that had to fill up first before the water would go through one of the pipes. So that's why Michael was up on the roof for a half an hour with the hose, pouring water into a drain, and us waiting like, where's the water going? We don't see it. But we solved the mystery, we reconfigured everything, and like I said, there was a lot of structures, underground pipes, and everything is good now. We brought the grade in the middle of the parking lot. Remember I was talking about, you know, this teacher who put her shoe in there and just got filled up with water? We brought the center of the parking lot up 2.5 feet. You'll go there right now, and it just looks like it's always been that way, but it wasn't that way always, because it dished down and it sunk, probably because a lot of the drainage was being undermined by just going off in every direction underneath the parking lot. So And then here was this was near and dear to my heart when I saw this happening. That's the first layer of asphalt that got laid down on the parking lot. I know you're thinking Matt's a little bit off here by getting excited about asphalt, but I was very excited about asphalt. And then here is the beginning. There's a little shallow area near the front entrance of the Smith Gym. This is the entrance to the upper elementary school. You see the dirt where the flagpole is over there off in the upper left-hand corner. And then there's another area segregated where the entrance to the school is, because those are going to be filled in with brick. See all the brick around the, yeah, that's when the brick was done, around the parking lot, and then there's the entrance. So when you drive into the parking lot, you see the brick walkway, you see the cement curbing and the granite, the cement walkway and then the curbing, and it leads your eye to say this is the entrance to the school. We're thinking about doing something with the signage on the front of the building, because it says Mastrocola, James Mastrocola Elementary School, but the letters are like a stainless, and you really can't see them. So we will either want to do something different with those letters, or to put some signage someplace else, so when you drive into that parking lot, you know you're at Mastrocola Elementary School, and you know where the office is in the main entrance, because that's very important. It's important for the fire department, it's important for the police department, you know, because if you have an emergency and you have a police officer who's been on the force for like 6 months, they don't necessarily know everything, and to have a sign that says this is the elementary school and this is how you get in there, that is very important for everybody.
I think to add to that, Matt, is that when you have parents that aren't familiar, they're going
Yes,
there first. You don't want them
absolutely.
wandering campus not being able to find
No.
things, because that can look suspicious as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, I recall a anecdotal story. My daughter did a little thing when she was in grad school with Marsha McGill, and she was volunteering over there. And she calls me up, Dad, how do I get in the upper elementary school? I can't find the entrance. And she was walking around this parking lot. So I had to go over there and drive her in and show her where the entrance was. But this is the completed parking lot. We switched the spaces around. We gained maybe 20, 25 more spaces in this. We also have lighting in the parking lot now. You see an overhead light pole, nice bronze structure, kind of like what we have at the middle school, to match that design. And those are all LED lights, and it used to be after you were at a meeting and you got out at night, or if you're a parent and you're there and you're getting out at night, you couldn't see really where your car was. I remember hitting my little switch over here to see my lights flash so I could pick up my car wherever it was. So I want to go, it'd be my first time seeing them at night. I want to go and, after the meeting, just take a ride and look to see how the light is. But it should be pretty good. The only concern I have is I don't want it to spill too much into the neighboring property. So we may have to put some, if that's the case, we'll put some diffusers on them to take care of that situation. This is what the parking lot where James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School used to look like. This is the beginning of their walkway, their brick walkway. Here's it under like 90% done, and then kind of completely done. That's another view. And here's basically the parking lot. So that's all been finished, and that was completely dug up and redone, so it'll last a good number of years. And with doing this, we worked closely with the town of Merrimack coming in because this parking lot goes on to School Street, which is a town road, and the parking lot at MES went on to Bishop Street, which is a town road. So they wanted to make sure the levels were correct and everything like that. And they were really, really good. A couple other people I'd like to thank, Tom Tussaud and Mike Dumay, who were awesome in dealing with some of the the issues, the day-to-day stuff. Michelle Romaine, you know, when we were talking about the walkway and the entrance to Massaquoi Elementary School, you know, I called up Michelle. She was in. I said, "Can you come out?" She came out and spent like an hour and a half with us out there, saying, "Okay, well, what if we move this over here? Can I move your sign back 10 feet? Because that'll make the patio where the flagpole is much nicer. It's not going to have a sign there. We'll put some lights on it, so the sign has some lights on it at night so you can see the sign." So we kind of designed it a little bit and made tweaks while we were putting the thing together. So she was helpful. Nancy Rose. We had overhead wires in that parking lot. We were all looking at the overhead wires, and I'm going, I think one of those could be the fiber optic cable that goes from the high school all the way from my office, coming down and then going into the upper elementary school where the library is. There's a computer closet there, and that's where the main feed is that feeds the upper and the elementary school. So I wasn't sure, and it's like, I know I want to bury this thing, but I can't bury electrical with fiber together in the same conduit. So just lucky enough to call up Nancy Rose. Says, "Hey, Nancy, what are you doing right now?" She says, "Well, I'm in my office." I says, "Great, that's good to hear. Would you mind doing me a huge favor? I've got like 10 guys here, and we don't know what this cable is. We want you to, can you tell us where the fiber goes into the building?" So Nancy comes running down. She's looking at it. She says, "No, it's coming from this way. It's not coming on that pole. I know that because TNT redid it or something like that, so it was recent." So I'm thinking it's going one way. That's bugging me, and I call in a resource who's here, who immediately drops what they're doing and coming to our aid. So it was a tremendous group effort from everybody, and I think Michelle and Marcia are very happy with it. I know I am. So that's the summer projects that we did to maintain our buildings in the way that people are accustomed to seeing them. And that's the most important thing, accustomed to seeing them. And that takes planning, that takes appropriate funding. Town of Merrimack has been very good to us in maintaining their facilities and allowing us to spend the money that they allow us to spend in order to make sure everything is solid and good for the future. So that's all I have.
Questions? I see Cinda.
A comment and a question. I agree. I'm excited about the parking lot. I think it was definitely well needed, and I think one of the biggest benefits are the safety advantages. The lighting, for example, in an elementary school to come out, particularly in the winter months when it can be very dark, and to all of a sudden now have the ability to have more lighting, especially around our youngest of children. So super kudos for getting that done and to everyone involved. The other question I had is, if I remember from the plans, there was a spot maybe for a garden or something by the entranceway for some greenery or landscaping, or
That kind of went by the wayside as far as we made it a fire lane because we paved right up into the building, and so there's nothing there. But they have some potted plants, and they have an area where the sign is moved to behind the flagpole that they can do something with, and they have 2 islands there that have the light poles in them. And that could be an appropriate space to put some sort of colorful greenery or something to bring some, I don't know.
some life to
Some
something
life
that's so
to it. So it's
institutional
just not-
looking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that I feel that we could do a better job on, some of the aesthetics that don't cost a lot, but, need to be maintained. But some perennials or some flowering, whatever, in those areas, I think would look really neat. So
Yeah.
we had to lose the garden to gain the fire lane
Okay.
area.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, great work on all of this. I appreciate the updates.
Are there any other questions on the summer projects? Thank you very much. Another eventful season for you. And then we're on to item number 6, which is summer and school year maintenance of school district property. So I will let you
Okay.
continue.
Yeah, I just want to put this slide up here just so everybody has an understanding of what we're talking about. When I've got my building valuation sheet here that I've been maintaining for years, but if I summarize everything, we're talking total amount of square footage of all of our facilities is 663,000 square feet. We have current, for insurance purposes, building valuations. This is replacement costs of the buildings of $120 million worth of building infrastructure. The contents is around $20 million of contents, furniture, computer equipment. It's probably a little bit more. We have to adjust that every single year. We haven't had a review of that this year, so we'll have to look at that. And then the maintainable acreage, that includes the fields, the grassy areas around the schools that have to be maintained. You know, like the circle at Reed's, the circle at Thornton's, mostly at the middle school because it was designed to have grass around it a little bit more than some of the other schools that are just asphalt right up into the building. So we have 50 acres of that to maintain all year round. And especially when getting ready for the year, and as well as continuing on through the year, from a maintenance standpoint and from a cleanliness and housekeeping standpoint, that's a lot of square footage to take care of on a daily basis, and that's a lot of square footage to go through with a fine-tooth comb over the summertime in order to clean and organize and disinfect and everything like that. And it doesn't happen by accident. It happens with a really impressive, almost military-like action plan of what's going to happen when. You know, there are memos that goes out to all high school custodians, and each high school principal has a memo, a letter from maintenance telling them when they're going to be working in their building, what's going to be happening throughout the year. Just here's one for the high school. You know, prior to the last day of school, please clean the gym rafters, walls, and bleachers, removing any gum from the bleachers and the floors. All lights, radiators, and vents should be completed before the end of the school year. On June 18th, the head custodian will set up carts for the summer, so they load all their materials together. Then on the last day of school, you know, have one person go through the floor, clean out the lockers, so one person's doing that. Any electronics or textbooks, bring them to the office. Second person go around, especially in the elementary schools, to get all the area rugs, the rugs from kindergarten, whatever. They take them all out of the rooms. They'll bring them in the gym. They'll label them on the back saying where they came from so they can go back to where they were. And then they extract them or get a floor machine, a carpet cleaning machine, and clean every single carpet out of the classroom in a centralized area so they can do them all at once, label them on the back, and then once they dry out and they're good, and when they're ready, then they can go back in the classrooms. Let's see. They start cleaning out the boys' locker room, the training hall, the exercise room, the bleachers, the seats underneath. They have F section, G section, whatever laid out as far as the high school goes and other buildings. And then when we had to shut down part of the high school because of the transformer and switchgear thing that killed the electricity in most of the building, then they were moved to the middle school. So the whole crew that was at the high school was moved to the middle school. So they shift, and they're on day shift. They're not on evening shift during the summertime. So they're on day shift so they can all work together as a group. So one custodian goes through the classrooms, bathroom areas that's used by summer school and the high school. So those are on the list. So the custodians know summer school's going on in the high school. So those rooms, and they have, you know, over here, the summer school program is using room 260, 262, 264, 260, you know, and from this date to this date, from this time to that time. So make sure you go in because it's being used, and all the bathrooms and everything like that, make sure they're clean because summer school. Then we have the ESY program, and then we have other trades that come in. Let's see, the gyms will be closed for refinishing July 2nd through August 13th. So that's when that happens. So everything happens at a schedule, and if floors need to be cleaned or not cleaned so that workers can get to the gym floors without stepping on fresh wax, that all has to be coordinated. And so they plan it out and they map it out depending upon what's going on. You know, the sprinkler company comes in, cleans all the sprinkler heads, looks at everything. We talked about sealing the concrete. Remember that when the middle school and we built the sidewalks? Okay, well, this was the year for the high school to have its sidewalk that we redid in certain areas, cleaned, power washed, and resealed. So that's on the list. The athletic department uses the building too, so we have to accommodate for them. So we have, you know, a detailed listing of everything that's going on, and then we have procedures for guidelines to clean, how to properly clean a ceiling. You know, you take a broom with a dry cloth on it, you go back and forth, you make sure everything is clean. You clean all the blackboards with cold water and a squeegee. You know, it's specific. You make sure all the whiteboards are wiped down. Clean the windows, the window shades. There's a process for cleaning bathrooms. You know, you have to use this specific product. It says how much to use. It says what tool you're going to use. It says don't use a floor buffer near one of the toilets because they have a tendency to skip a little bit and you could crack a toilet. It has happened in the past, hence the modification was made to not use the floor machines near any of the toilets. So, you know, between that, between carpets, between windows, walls, disinfecting the entire bathrooms, the classrooms, all the glass in the buildings, it's an arduous task, and it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time and a lot of organizational skills to get through it and still have all the custodians talking to one another at the end of the day. Because, you know, people can get mixed up and have, you know, crossed wires and whatnot, but all this planning that's done by the facilities department just keeps our buildings looking good and is so important to maintain them, like I said, and accustomed to what people expect to see. You know, I've been in a lot of schools. I've been in a lot of school districts, and I've seen certain ones that leave me feeling a little bit badly about it. These buildings that you have here are always kept in the best of shape, and even the bricks in front of the Smith Gym have a shine to them. I never saw that in another school, that we wax bricks, but we do here. And so that's kind of the whole theme, that we take pride in what we do and we organize it in a nice schedule that everybody understands and it's communicated to everybody. And it just shows our pride and ownership, and we hope that is reflected in how the community views us. So that's my little maintenance piece for your edification.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the summer maintenance projects and the maintenance strategy for the school year, of course? Mark, absolutely.
So I just wanted to just add to say that we've had a number of families move into the district over the summer, and of course they make their way to the home school, and frequently they make their way for a variety of reasons into central office. And so I've had occasion to hear a number of some of these are new people to our community who have specifically talked about, when they've had a chance to see the schools, have specifically talked about how gratified they are that they're in a community where the schools look like they look. It's not a vanity project to keep buildings looking good. We have a lot of value in those buildings, but the greatest value are the children and the staff that are in them. And it's a reflection on a community, the degree to which buildings are maintained. And so I think we just want to take this opportunity once again to thank the community, because they have always been so supportive. And the description that Matt gave of the effort it takes to keep it up is real. And it's made possible, again, by the community that wills it to be so. They recognize that, a healthy and productive and beautiful buildings where the learning happens is a key to not just a school's success, but a town's success. So I think it's one of those things that might often be sort of taken for granted almost, like, well, what really does happen in the summer to make these things? They don't happen by snapping your fingers. So Matt pointed out, great thanks, of course, to Matt, but also to Tom Tuso and all of the maintenance staff. That is not, 660,000 square feet is not nothing. We have really great folks who keep it looking that way. So anyway.
Naomi?
Just to reiterate your last point, it's come up a couple of times, but it's worth saying again, the maintenance and custodial staff who do a certain amount of work behind the scenes are certainly not visible to the community. It's important to highlight their work whenever we can, because they do a great job. Yeah.
Definitely. And I would just add that this strategy, it's not new. It's something, the way the district's been run for a long time and will continue to be run. And it's all about spending a little, because it really is, when you consider the cost of building a facility, and you've done that too in your role, Matt. But spending the money that we do to maintain the facilities puts us in a position where we are not asking to build new facilities for the sake of lack of maintenance. So we by being neglectful, that's when you get put in a position where you can no longer, again, and we've seen it in New Hampshire, districts that got their buildings closed down because they weren't maintained to appropriate standards, trying to save money, and it ended up costing them dearly, having to close the whole school and not be able to operate, busing kids out of town. Those are real, tangible stories that happened in New Hampshire. And, we were one step ahead of that at all times. I think that, what we did this summer with the summer maintenance projects, the switchgear, we took it to its final days. We took the boilers to its final days. We were, but we could get to that point because we stayed ahead of it. We exceeded the life expectation of this machinery because of proactive managed maintenance. And we do that throughout the year with every corner of our facilities. And I think tonight's multitude of presentations just kind of showed that. So, that's the principle on which, the thing that's the least, nothing personal, Matt, but the least exciting about being in education is the facility. The most exciting thing is the learning. But you can't have one without the other. So thank you for all of that. And that's leading into, I think, hopefully it was a good lead-in for you, John, because item number 7 is August Academy 2019, an overview with you.
Thank you very much. You'll see in front of you, all the board members, you have a little gift there, and it's a lanyard, and it says on it, what's next, Merrimack? And it's kind of what all of our 650 invited attendees to our August Academy this year all got one this year. So it's kind of, it's for you. This year, August Academy, it was a pleasure to work with our team of administrators, and it truly was, to put together the brochure you have in front of you also, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as I continue my presentation. So our theme this year, what's next, Merrimack? And let me, part of this was in both myself, Mark's, and Shannon's presentation to the staff. We really talked about kind of our new future. We're a new team, and I think that we talked about how do we cherish what we've done for so many years in Merrimack, but also look to the future for our students and for ourselves. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So what goes into August Academy? There's a lot. It begins really with our leadership team met each Tuesday from June to August. We got together 10 o'clock on Tuesday, and it was a standing meeting. And those that were available attended, and I would say that almost every meeting we had every school represented there, and both central office and student services. So shared responsibility in planning and decision making. At one point, we got to the point where we wanted to create groups, and we wanted to create preschool through 12th grade groups of educators who taught across the board, all special educators, all service providers, and really wanted to create some teams. And we said, how are we going to do that? And Adam Carragher and Kim Yarlott said, we got it. And they started just like planning a wedding. We took all the roles of staff from each of our building, and we went through and we regrouped them to tables, 45 tables of 10 is what we did, and created home teams that will be part of our future in Merrimack that has a nice pre-K through 12 transition and grouping that we'll be able to use. We had to pick a venue and a program. And so we began with the venue, and we looked at multiple places. 650 educators is a hard place to find in New Hampshire. And we had came down to 3 or 4 venues, and we decided to go to the Radisson in Nashua, who accommodated us for our first 2 days of our academy. Communication plan, develop it in the brochure. This was this year. How do we want to communicate this? It's difficult sometimes when 6 principals want to send out a letter, and then for the last 10 years, Mark has sent out a letter, and we've tried to communicate the right times, the right places. Inevitably, as hard as we try and we're on the same page, someone may put 8:30 versus 8 o'clock, or 7:45 versus 8, and we have confusion. So this year we said, let's learn from our past, and let's think about how can we do this in a cohesive way. And you all have a copy of the brochure with you, and this was our way of communicating one message to staff. So we had a commitment from all 6 schools to move on from this initiative this year. This was a launch, and we launched Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And there is also a UDL network that is sponsored by the Department of Education. And we've joined that network now with all 6 buildings and a leadership team. And this was part of our commitment to move forward this year. Last year, at the end of the year, you heard from both the upper elementary school and the middle school, who joined last year and did some learning. Well, we've all joined on board, and that's kind of our launch really was this academy this year. And it's kind of gave us a very, which I think is a very positive start. So the brochure. You'll see by the brochure, this is a lot of detail and a lot of planning. It was led by Dr. McLaughlin, and Chair Barnes really led us off, and then I followed up with talking about what's next. And then we had a gentleman by the name of Steve McGuire, who is a teacher at Situate High School, and a presenter who presents across our country and in Canada, and really talks about children and being present for our kids and building relationships. And it was a nice message for our staff, and very positive to lead them into his message. And his message really is every student deserves a champion, and that is a picture of Steve. And he was a great lead to our commitment to the work we've done around social emotional learning, commitment we've done around dedicating to our students, and bringing our community together. And this was really, Steve's message was strong, and it allowed us to really have a nice launch. So we hit a lot of targets right in the beginning of our August Academy on those first 2 days. And I'm going to begin with kind of our targets, so it's going to kind of be a backwards design here as I do this. Our opening speech has introduced us as leaders, and that we had clear commitment and a plan for the next few years. And then Steve McGuire really focused on building relationships with all of our students. We introduced universal design, as I said, to our professional staff. We launched our home teams I spoke about, those 45 home teams of 10 from pre-K to 12. And then our administrative assistants our technicians and our nurses also had an opportunity to be part of our day. And we had all 650 people in one room, which was powerful. And those are all of our teaching staff, all of our paraeducators, all of our support staff, all of our service providers, all of our administrative assistants, and all of our technicians all in one place. So they talked about really, learned about respectful workplace and emotional control in the workplace. Matt got to take part in that
Yes.
workshop, which was
Absolutely.
great. And then our paraeducators and our kindergarten instructional assistants learned more about trauma, and we had some experts come in from our work around mental health and Project Grow, and really informed care and really what to do with those students in those days when they really need some help regulating their emotions, and they learned about that on that day. So some good progress being made. So universal design for learning in UDL, and this will be a word that I hope that we say around the table a lot and we talk a lot over the next 3 years as we move forward with our commitment to the Universal Design Network. So what is UDL? Come on. So UDL, these are our facilitators, as you see. They are from an organization called CAST. And CAST is really a educational think tank, and they're based out of Wakefield, Mass. And they are also the facilitators who are involved in the New Hampshire Universal Design Network. So we've worked with, and Bill Wilmot, the gentleman to your right, is the lead. He will be Merrimack's lead as we work for the next 3 years with him. Okay, Universal Design for Learning. And it's really, not to read to you, but it's our approach to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all by setting clear, rigorous goals, anticipating barriers, and proactively designing to minimize those barriers. So it's really a process. And the process of UDL, we're going to dive into again, like I said, with all 6 teams. So here's the big 3 areas of universal design: the neuroscience, architecture, and the learning. So let's talk first about the neuroscience. So as we all know, in education, a lot of brain research has happened over the last 5 to 10 years. And really, we're learning more and more about how people learn, and really are. So there is no average brain. The brain has plasticity, amazingly. Goals drive the neurosystem. So that's what we are. So 3 parts of the brains are activated as we do this. So what's this saying is that we all have our needs, and we all learn in different ways, to put it in very simple terms. So kind of like, oh, I just lost it just went down. We are having fun here. Why did it do that? Oh, there we go again. I'm sorry, I don't know where I just went. That is bizarre. I'll be with you in 1 second, sorry.
Okay. So while John's pulling that up, I would just kind of, again, at the risk of being repetitive, but some people listening to this might think that some of this is what has been happening all along. And in many cases, that's true. In many cases, our teachers and teachers everywhere do kind of create their instructional environment this way. But it's not, even now, the use of brain study and brain research doesn't always dominate the instructional practices that we engage in. And this notion about using what we know about the brain and what we know about the differences in individual brains leads to certain conclusions, like it doesn't make sense to teach one way to an entire class. It means that we have to really get to know our students and their strengths and differences and play to those as best we can, and at the same time be mindful that every one of us in our learning experiences have barriers that really kind of get in the way of our accessing our education. And so instead of teaching in a way that suggests, well, some of you might get this and some of you won't, and we'll just deal with it, or you'll deal with it, we're really trying to be planful and mindful, as John's going to speak about anticipating those things that might get in a student's way, and instead of just writing them off as part of the way we do business, to actually address them, to try to overcome them so that they don't become impediments to learning.
Great segue, Mark. Thank you. So as Mark talked about those impediments, and we all have different things and bring things to place, just like when you go out to dinner with a family, you're going to have different things that we all like, prefer, and can and can't do because of different things. So it talks about, you know, some people are vegan on my slide. Some people hate mushrooms. Some people can't eat red meat. Some people don't like anything with sauce because they can't. Allergies. Some can't eat fish, and a whole thing. So when you're in your classroom, there is a design factor to this, knowing these barriers and knowing your students and knowing what they can and can't do prior to beginning to develop your lessons and develop the way you teach. So let's talk about the architecture of this when we're building. Matt will like this part.
Yes.
So, retrofitting for access. Our past thinking might have been, okay, well, we have all these barriers in our classroom. We have all these things that are, so let's find a workaround, a way to do a difference. For example, if it's an older building and there's stairs right there, we may say, all right, the sign, enter the rear of the building, or have a big, huge ramp that we may add on to the front of the building. May not be aesthetically pleasing, but it works. It gets the job done. Yeah, we fixed it. Well, it's a retrofit, not necessarily fixing the problem. It's finding a way around the problem for what it is. If you build it with the idea in mind that everyone has to access it and everyone has to get in, you see in this picture, you have both stairs and a ramp built together. That's allowing us all to access and be able to get it. We can all benefit from that. Another example. Boy on the left in the wheelchair says, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the custodian says, all the other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through the shoveling them off, it'll be clear the ramp I'll clear the ramp for you. Well, the child in the wheelchair again says, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all just get in. So it's the idea of the fact that the ramp is the egress to all of them. Equality, equity, and UDL. This first picture, as you can see, it's equal. They all have an equal box to stand on. They can't all see or access what they want. Now we've modified the box. We haven't changed anything, we just modified the box. And now we can all see what we have to do. However, but if we build it by design, we don't have to change it. We can all see the game. Again, this is the architectural part of it. Through architecture and universal design, we've also been able to really have some tools that are effective and helpful to everyone. Automatic doors, you see those in all buildings now. You have curb cutouts, and you have these easy grip tools that are probably common in most people's houses now that weren't. And all of those, remember those old potato peelers, and you took half your hand with the potato. Very different, but now they're universally designed for all the access. And this was designed in part to how to help those with disabilities.
Focus on necessary for some, just
Yep.
reiterate that.
Yep. And again, these are necessary for some, but they're good for all. And again, in our learning and in our teaching, there might be things that are necessary for some, but they're good for all. And that was one of the messages we delivered at the academy. It's not a learning. Three parts to this: engagement, representation, and action and expression. And you'll see when learning happens, all three of these have to be present. How learners engage is important. How will learners perceive and comprehend the instruction? And how will learners act on their understanding? So in a way, it's saying that with all three pieces put this together, our learners will learn in the classroom. And again, back to, although maybe designed for some, it's good for all. So what we asked of our educators over the first couple of days for our launch, and again, we'll have a couple more years of this still going on, is to set clear and rigorous goals for our students, anticipate the barriers for students, and design options. Look at those three areas we talked about when designing lessons. So, just saying it again in a different way, goal-directed or intentional. So there we go. We're proactive, flexible, learning-centered, guided by empathy and understanding of the learning experience. Those are our barriers. Guided by principles of research, always brainstorming new ideas. And again, we are reflective in our practice, always seeking feedback and engaging on ongoing improvement. So that's, in a big picture, that's UDL, and that's a big part of what we had. Now, to make it a little clearer, you all remember this slide. And this is our RTI model for those that may not know this in the district, and response to intervention. And really what this says is the majority of our students, that's about 80% in the middle. And then we have about 10% in tier 2, both that need a little more challenge and need maybe a little more intervention. And then we have about 5% on either side that have really advanced learning needs or may need really remedial learning needs. And that's our RTI model. So we have multiple ends of the spectrum, but it's a continuum throughout learning. So to sum up, let's hope this works. Not online. Oh, we're not going to get my video. I knew it wouldn't work.
It's okay.
We'll post it. So I will post the video because I don't think I have internet access. I think it didn't work. So I'm going to pause there and ask if there's any questions about August Academy, and then I'm going to play with this for 1 second while I'm answering.
Okay, I see Andy so far.
So at the beginning, you talked about how all the schools in the district now are part of the UDL, consortium or group or within the state.
Network, yep.
How broad is that? Is that membership across school districts in the state? Is it like 3 districts? Is it like 300 districts? Is it somewhere in the middle?
So there's 54 schools right now that they'll be participating this year in the UDL network.
54 schools, not districts, but
No,
Okay.
so let me expand upon that a little bit. So Bill Wilmont, who I showed a picture of, Bill is our lead. We are the only district in New Hampshire that has a complete district of all of our schools involved in the network. There's multiple districts with 2 or 3 schools or 4 schools, but we are the district that has all of our schools involved in it.
and is there a concentration of a level of school that the other districts might be more? I mean, is it more commonly done at elementary or high or something like that?
It's a good spread throughout the state.
And
This
what's
is the 3rd cohort going through, so there's been other cohorts going through. This is the 3rd cohort.
And the other question is, you mentioned that the Department of Education sort of supports this. Can you talk about, is this something they're encouraging districts to get involved in? Are we like bleeding edge, or are we like the something different that other districts aren't planning on doing? How do you view UDL in the state as it moves forward?
So, is it encouraged? Yes, if that's the question. It's very encouraged by the state. It's been something that, so New Hampshire is the only state of 50. Bill Wilmot just told me he just got back from a consortium that was all the networks of UDL and all the facilitators across country, and we are the only one that's attached to our DOE for this initiative. That there is three trainings throughout the year. There are face-to-face trainings, 3 opportunities for Bill to come out and do coaching in the buildings, and then a monthly phone call conference that he'll be involved in with all of our teams in the district. So it is at no cost to the district to be part of this the network. It is encouraged, and we are not the first cohort, but we are the 3rd cohort that's beginning right now. Last year, the 2nd cohort was the upper elementary school and the middle school who started that.
So I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what was most well received, what seems to be best covered already by the folks who attended, what seemed to be the areas they're looking forward most to work on. How did it go?
So I think that what went well was, I think, our teams. I really think the opportunity, so the design of it, I'll talk about the design, was they called them sandboxes, but they were like mini workshops. And there was 4 of those set up, 3 concurrent times, 3 different times throughout the day. And what the participants would do is they would go to a sandbox and learn about, what are expert learners, and what was the experience from the middle and the upper elementary school might be one of them. What do I need to know more about the architecture of UDL? And there was these mini workshops set up. And so 2 or 3 members from our teams would go and learn, and then come back to their home teams and teach their team, so their pre-K 12 team. And that happened 3 different times throughout the course of the 2 days in doing that, and then some general overview and information. I think it really was an opportunity to be learners for everybody and be teachers at the same time. So I think that's what went well. I think what still needs to happen is a deeper understanding about how does this affect my instructional planning. That's the part that in a day and a half we weren't going to get to, but we got the underlaying and the purpose of why we wanted to be there. Mark, would you add anything?
Yeah, I would. It's an excellent question. So, I'm always trying to sort of put things in context. And so there are lots of things that are kind of factoring into this. So again, at the risk of repeating, this is a 3-year commitment. So we're really digging deep in this. And why are we doing this? Because we know the things that Merrimack as a school system can do better. We're not hiding that fact. We are seeking ways always to do better. We have a Commissioner of Education and a State Department of Education that consistently talks about innovation, do things differently. You can't do things the same way and expect a different result. We also, for years, have been talking about understanding, which is different from knowing. We've been talking for years about instructional practices that have to get with the times. We are encouraging families to encourage their students to think differently about the way that they engage with their work, the way that they engage with instruction. We have had standards for years now that we have been operating under that are intended to prepare students to be college and career ready. College and career ready now means something very different than it did in 1982. And so we can't keep teaching, and parents can't expect us to keep teaching the way we used to teach. It's not enough to say, in my day, this is how we did it, because in many cases, that was a while ago. And if in this business, we're in the business of just staying put, then we're not supporting students. Well, it's easier to stay status quo. It's much easier to do that. So you asked the challenge. The challenge is to create the conditions where teachers can adopt a new way of orienting themselves, which isn't to say that our teachers aren't great people and haven't done the best by students. But there's a certain kind of traditionalism that is true in Merrimack, as it is true in a lot of places, not just Merrimack, and it takes a leap of faith to get teachers to recognize what it takes, what does real change mean for creating the conditions for success now, not 10 or 15 years ago. That means some things have to be contemplated as different that didn't used to be contemplated before. And we've got quite a few examples in districts. Some are kind of publicized and some even controversial and others less so. But that's the challenge. And it's not just a challenge, if I could say, for teachers, but it could be even for some, you know, families who, again, judging their child's experience by what their experience was. And that's really not, it's not possible to do that anymore. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but those are the challenges, and I don't think it's healthy to say that they're not, and it doesn't mean a critique of teachers. It means, and what we always say in Merrimack is when we talk about doing something different, we're not implying that you've been doing something bad. But when we talk about doing something different, we are saying it's because we're always about improvement. And it's easy to say, oh, that's how I've been doing it for X amount of time. It's harder to get people to leave a thing for a new thing. So we've made a 3-year commitment to this because it's not going to happen overnight. But one of our last words at August Academy was, every small change that you can make in instructional practice along the way is going to be exponentially impactful to students. And the last thing I'll say to your question is, when you know, mission statements for school districts and so on talk about, you know, all students can learn, you got to really think about what that means. Because in our district, what does all students mean? It means that we have students that are very accelerated, and we have students who have significant challenges. They are part of the all, and it takes a lot of effort to get those all really included in learning if you're guided by standards and expectations so that everybody can achieve. So when you're imagining what this is looking like, it's not 25 students with similar abilities sitting in every classroom in our district. And in the old days, you might say all, but you really mean the best kids in the class. And now, we can't do that. Every kid is a best kid, and every kid deserves to be instructed in a way that supports their learning. Hence, the idea of anticipating barriers, the idea of trying to figure out what it is that makes Mrs. Nunez tick different from Dr. Schoenfeld. One's not brighter or less bright, they're just different, because what do we know about brain science? Brains are different. And so all of those things are challenges to help people really apprehend the level of depth that we're trying to go to, hence 3 years.
Brandy, and I think Andy, and Cinda, I think we'll just run the numbers. Okay.
I actually have 3 questions. My first is, what is the plan for new hires relative to UDL, and how will they adopt it from the start so that way there isn't a gap? Like, I know we're talking about these 3 years, but from an educator perspective coming into our district without having UDL as a background, what's the ramp up effort, and how will that affect their transition into our district? That's my first.
So I'll just start, and I'll have John. So the first thing is, the good news is this year all the new hires were part of the initial rollout. The second thing is that the hiring process is very important in Merrimack. I don't know if people know this, the hiring process goes through multiple layers, starting at the school level with teams of teachers and an administrator. Then if a person passes a level, then goes to that administrator and the principal, and if the person passes that level, goes to the assistant superintendent for final hiring. So the hiring process is critical, where we can understand, not necessarily have you got experience in UDL, but are you a flexible thinker? Not necessarily do you know all about brain architecture, but are you open to new ideas? And then the rest is much easier to accomplish. But if in the hiring process you see people that sort of have fixed mindsets, might be a time to consider whether this is the person that we want to bring into the district. The actual training of UDL, I think, is not that complicated once we make sure that the person in front of us is actually ready to absorb it. That's what I would say.
I would agree too, and it's a very good question, because part of our challenge is we have groups. We have 6 distinct groups that are about between 10 and 14 educators that are involved in this UDL network. Well, our district's a lot bigger than those groups, so therefore that's why the concept of home teams. We had to find a way we could have that cohesiveness built into our district, and we didn't have a common structure of how do you have one group go out and learn and then share their learning with multiple people. So the idea of those newer educators, or educators that may need a second dosis, a third dosis to understand it, is going to be developed through our teams coming back together, and our home teams working together and sharing a lot of video and being able to push those out to people and react and reflect as your team and communicate with your team. It's making something very big, very small for us. Teams of 10 across the district. So I have 45 facilitators that are kind of the leads for those teams that we utilized to run their groups over the August Academy. Now I have that group to be able to push information out to say, hey, talk to your teams about. Here's a video to share to your teams on. And keep building that learning and building that structure as we learn as a district. Keep feeding those teams to keep them in that structure working forward. That's the idea and the concept about how to bring others on board and how to help those that may struggle.
How will we know if we're effective?
So the question of accountability and measurability is really a good one. So right now, and we're going to talk about this in a few weeks, right now, a lot of effectiveness or perceived effectiveness is published in terms of school rankings. And it matters quite a bit. However, when you look, and I'll talk more about this in a few weeks, but when you look at school rankings, which are frequently published as a measure of effectiveness, they look at really 3 very finite things, like, for instance, graduation rate, which is a very complicated thing, not a defense. It's true. We can do better, and we're going to talk about that too. But it's more complicated than people think, and in a sense, in one sense, perhaps less representative of true effectiveness than it would seem. The ability to compete or to complete a test in language arts and math is an example of a district that's considered effective or upon which the rankings are based. What isn't counted in that are how are the marginalized students in any system, how are they progressing? Progress towards a goal is never part of a school ranking. So what we're looking for are the kinds of, we are very devoted to improving graduation rate, and we are very devoted to continuing to improve test scores, although I will say again that in the years that we have done really well, we haven't over-celebrated because we know that's a point in time. And the years that we haven't done great, we haven't hung our head in shame because the fact is that there are so many variables in student performance. So we're looking for some consistency. We're looking for students to be able to, among other things, name the learning style that works best for them, to advocate for themselves. Mrs. Nunez, I can't learn that way. Can you please give me a strategy like this? The teacher, ability to be able to differentiate instruction according to a student's needs. The ability for a student to demonstrate their effectiveness in multiple ways rather than in one way, which is typically a definition of effectiveness, which is how you do on a paper pencil test. We have a lot of students in this district for whom a paper pencil test is a barrier. And so a demonstration of success would be building multiple ways for students to show what they know and to have the public recognize them as equally valid. Some of that is our challenge, and some of that is, you know, the communities to work with us. But those would be examples of how we might do that.
I think that's awesome. I really am proud that our district is the only district-wide CAST. Is that what it? Okay. I think that's incredible, and I think for the amount of students that we have in our district, to put this to give it the momentum that it needs in order to be successful, I think is truly incredible. My only other question is relative to how a student may or may not feel any different in the classroom environment because of UDL. For those teachers who reach students in this type of way already, I'm assuming that there wouldn't be a huge shift in those particular classrooms. But would a student see any difference from the classroom environment with a teacher that's slowly learning this as their new way of instruction?
So I think I had a comment that kind of resonated with a few of our leadership team members when we had this exact conversation. And I talked about buying furniture and the opportunity to change and what's next Merrimack. A lot of that really has to do with an opportunity to make some changes and do some things a little bit different. So the architecture of a classroom is up for question about it currently with our chairs that we buy from the same vendor. We've bought, nice guy, but we bought chairs for him for as long as I've been in Merrimack, for my 20th year in district, and we call the same person to buy the chairs. Not bad, they're good chairs, they're good furniture, and they really are. However, we need to start being a little more creative about some of the way that we design it for all students. And for example, Mark and I had I wish I could share my picture of the visual that we had today when we walked classrooms today at all 4 of the elementary schools and greeted teachers and met students. And when we did that, we walked into one room, and to give an example, there was 4 stand-up desks with stools. There was 2 new, what did you call it, a type of seating that was waffle chairs that kind of wobbled, that were there for some more active kids, and some traditional desks and some tables and a couple beanbag chairs. And it was all in the same classroom. So what you'll see hopefully over the next few years is more of that, more opportunities for free seating, free grouping, all of that. The research behind this about comfortable environment, it lends right into our work around social emotional learning in the classroom and our adoption of second step. It's all around the same design. The idea is design it because it's good for some, but it's probably good for all. So you'll see some of that, and that will be the impact you'll see.
Yeah, go ahead, Naomi.
You just made me think of something that I think might be important to say, and that is, it can be easy sometimes to listen to what we're saying and think that it's lowering standards in some way. And I think it's incredibly important to reiterate that rigor point. It sounds to me like what this is that for a very long time, we've asked certain students to accept limitations and just accept that we won't do things that they need, that we'll only do certain things that certain students need. And what we're doing now is saying that that's not an acceptable educational practice. It's not so much that children now get to decide they like one chair versus another. It's that children have always preferred to learn sitting different ways, and we've always given preferential treatment to the ones who like desks. Does that sound?
I would say that that's absolutely 100% true, accurate, and I really appreciate your saying that. There is nothing not rigorous about what we're talking about, but sometimes rigor, I think, has been equated with pain. Like, if it's hard and rigorous and therefore worth your time, it's got to hurt you and be uncomfortable for you, and you've got to gut your way through it. And so when Brandy was talking a minute ago about how might a student feel, the way that a student might feel if we're really good at this moving forward is more comfortable in a classroom, less nervous about asking a question because it doesn't fit the profile of, you know, what should be asked in a classroom. A student, you have to believe, for any of this to make sense, you have to believe that a brain is wired differently. And if you believe that, then everything makes sense, what we're talking about. If you don't really believe that, if you kind of think that there's one way to learn, therefore there's one way to teach, and there's one kind of environment, if that's what you believe, this will not make sense to you. But we're supported by brain science that says otherwise. And so we're only trying to adapt to the brain science and have the outcomes be equally rigorous. But if your child is, you know, feeling comfortable, that's a good thing for an outcome, and it doesn't mean we've made it easy. We're not trying to lower the bar so much that everybody's happy but nobody's learning. Nothing could be further from the truth. So thank you for raising that point.
I think it's Andy, then Cinda.
Yeah, just Brandy actually asked my question about effectiveness. I was going to use the phrase, how do you know if you've been successful, and at what point do you do that? But listening to your explanation, I think it's spot on. I think that we as school board members, you as administration, get whacked around, for lack of a better term, because of placement and rankings and things like that. And I think that what you've laid out and what I've seen, and also being a parent of 3 different kids over the years that are all grown now, understanding that everybody learns differently, understand making this part of the norm of the way the teachers do it. It shows that we're trying to make a difference in this district, and I applaud administration and staff for doing this. I know that saying that the DOE and especially the state, edible at the department, encouraging these sort of changes, that we're taking part of this, is important for people to understand. This isn't something that we've made up that we're different than everybody else. This is part of what the state is encouraging to do. So I walked into this a little cynical, trying to understand, and listening to the explanation, I'm very pleased and actually encouraged to see the results of how this moves forward. So.
And Matt, I don't think you're getting your wire back. I think Andy's getting very attached.
I knew he was going to be the one to fiddle with it. And just
There
Do
you
you,
go.
do you know if you take this and you
Decided
do it,
to.
you can feel it bending slightly?
Can you?
Yeah, you can, just very slightly. Of course, it may take me all night to move it a quarter of an inch, but
Cinda, it's yours.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation and the update from August Academy. I did have a couple thoughts. I would say, I think as a board too, right, as a collective group, we are undergoing a significant paradigm shift, if you will, right, in the district and how we want to move forward with instruction. And I think that we need to remind ourselves too that just like teachers, just like kids, our teachers are also going to learn with their unique brains, and they're going to adopt change at different rates. So I think that, as mentioned earlier, right, there's every little small step towards that practice and understanding is going to take us some time. I think that's acknowledged. What I was wondering, though, just to throw out, I think this is a significant enough approach that we're undergoing as a district, and I'm wondering if it makes sense that we make it a standing agenda item for some period of time, and I'm open, I'm just brainstorming, I'm throwing it out there, sometimes I do that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a long agenda item, but maybe a success story for the board, and perhaps that may help a little bit with the change management piece, and the understanding that this is also an objective that's important to the board, and for the community to understand that as well. So if that's something that sounds good, I would propose that if everyone was in agreement with doing that. Because I think what's neat is, I mean, as we were talking about students with all different brains, teachers with all different brains, we also have teachers with all different degrees of time when they went to school, and some have very few years experience, some have many years of experience. Some have intuitively done this type of thing on their own, and some have not. And so I think just hearing the success stories and having those highlighted, I think is also a way of recognizing those people that, extremely important, because if our teachers, we need them. And that's how we are able to get through and instruct the content for the college and career readiness, right? So it's obviously a super critical piece. So, so if that sounds good, that's my suggestion, and those are my thoughts.
And it sounds excellent, and we will integrate that into the agenda.
And then I just had one more question, and
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just had one more question, and that was when we look at August Academy and we look at all the great things that are accomplished, as they are frequently. I know it's a pretty powerful event. What are the next steps? You know, how do we prevent that momentum from just stopping and thinking, oh, that was interesting, to how do we carry that forward? And how do we build upon not just, I think, the universal design for learning, but some of the other items that are really important for our teaching staff and our kids? So I'd like your thoughts on that, please.
And Mark, give her your $20 off camera, because that's a perfect question.
Yeah, that's a tee up, boy.
Oh.
I'll have done. I'll begin. Yeah, please.
A lot more to add to this one. So this was a major, I talked about, we met every Tuesday from June until really right up to the academy. And one of the major themes for our meetings was sustainability, and it's exactly the question you just asked. So thank you. I think that the really brainstorm around the home teams was one of the vehicles for at least the UDL initiative to really allow us to bring those groups together again throughout the year. We haven't decided a number of times. I mean, I would hope at least 2 to 3. Maybe more if we can figure it out, because of the different staggered end times of the day is a challenge, but we'll figure that out because we're doing this together. And it was, how do we sustain that? And in one, the UDL initiative has enough meeting times throughout the year for those groups to really sustain and move forward. And it's really planned and guided along with help from CAST. The home teams is going to be something that our UDL leadership team tackles and talks about when we meet monthly. That's exactly what we're talking about, sustainability of this effort, and how do we get it out to the mass of people that weren't part of these teams. So we'll utilize our home teams and those 45 10-person teams to kind of feed information to. That'll keep us going sustainably with this effort alone. So other initiatives such as our second step implementation from pre-K to 5 this year, we're really we've got a group of educators together that planned out the training for that to start the year. That group has been coming together all summer long, so they're sustaining their efforts, and the ones that piloted over the last year are really starting to work together and creating some online presence using groups through Office 365 and starting to talk and chat about, oh, I use this lesson. Did you try this? Here's a book that goes along with this lesson. Some of those sustainable efforts trying to use some technology we already have in place that's no further cost, just have to organize and use that. So we're starting to use groups a little more as a district. That gives us internal kind of chat rooms that does that. And I think that's where I'll stop and let you continue.
No, I'm going to ask you, actually, August Academy isn't the only thing that happened this summer. We also had our district leadership time together. And John, I will credit, found an excellent person to facilitate our own growth and professional development. And one of the things that this person recognized very capably is that we need, the leadership team needs to have structures to motivate each other to stay motivated with the initiatives that we're undertaking, which isn't to say that we don't try to do that, but what we always acknowledge is it's one thing to be, thinking about things on a beautiful summer day, and it's another thing to be implementing them in March when it's cold and muddy, or January or whenever, when the rush of a busy day could pull you away from it. So Allison got us to agree to some principles that we were going to hold each other accountable for. Can you just speak a little bit about that?
I trying to picture I actually pulled up my email right now, but yes, we talked about, so what Allison had us do, so Allison Jackson is assistant director of student activities at Rhode Island College, and she was able to work with our team to really give us an opportunity to look at our values, and we all took on a values assessment, and we did that prior to coming together. And what were some things we valued as a team? And one was, I sent it out today. You got it?
Yeah, I'm just.
All right. Yeah. So it was bravery, honesty, kindness, and innovation were our principles that we decided after multiple groupings together, like pairs and then bigger groups, to come up with that we are going to stick to those core values this year as a leadership team to keep ourselves accountable and be honest to each other. And when things are falling off, have that honest conversation, to also be there and present for each other and come together and work closely together. So that was really the work we did with Allison, and we're hoping to, again, stay connected to her and bring her back around when we might fall off, when that situation happens and we're busy and the winter comes and we're running around and not focused on moving forward some of our initiatives. We'll probably talk to Allison, going to come back and refocus us.
And part of, just because this is a really central question you're asking me, because it's really true, all these things could just fade away when we get busy but this is our work. So just to say a little bit more, bravery sounds like a funny word for, like, what do you mean bravery? But bravery and innovation go well together. So it is not easy to kind of introduce a new idea, especially in an environment where, like schooling, everybody has had the experience and everybody compares their present with their past. And if what's being proposed looks different, it doesn't always get received well. I understand that. So bravery means, are we going to support each other to continue to do the innovative thing, even when there are going to be people who are going to probably get a little ticky about it at times? So that's really what we mean when that maintains a momentum ourselves. Honesty, to be able to say to a colleague, I really like you a lot, but it seems like you're forgetting some of the innovation practices of UDL that we've been introducing, and to be able to call it out around the leadership table, not as a criticism, but as a way of being honest. Marge Chaffrey, whom I adore, would always say, the only way you know you care about somebody is if you're willing to tell them a hard truth. Marge was the master of that. And so when we say we're going to be honest, it's not to criticize, it's to say, I want to tell you something that I think isn't working great right now so you can improve. And so we've made a commitment off of the leadership retreat to these principles, and kindness. It's very easy to yell at people and to name call and to, whatever. That's the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do is express disagreement and not flay the skin off somebody. That's not easy to do. But we've agreed to do that as a team, and with our teachers, because as Cinda rightly said, they've got their own brains too, and they're going to work and adapt at a pace that they can. There are a lot of things that teachers have to accomplish in a day. So all of those things are parts of the way that we've agreed to hold each other accountable so that this doesn't fall off the table. So that was a tee up, but you probably wish you didn't ask it now. Right.
Well, and then my final question after what I'm hearing tonight, I'm hearing a lot. It makes me wonder if it's time to revisit the logic model for the district, because it's been a number of years and that it's last been revisited, and that's kind of the guiding mission of the district. So I feel like, if nothing else, it's probably a good thing to go back and revisit and all the other things we have to do, but they should match.
You're just firing on all cylinders tonight, aren't you? Great questions and great comments. Absolutely. John.
So what's interesting is some of the guiding principles behind this. I would agree that logic model, and I think it's great you brought that up. I think that some of our last iteration, though, I sat around that team when we developed the last iteration of the logic model, and it was really to bring things to a student-centered focus. And remember, a lot of our work where it was to revamp and bring it there. And I think that I would just iterate that a lot of this work is exactly what we're trying to do and accomplish the goals set forward by the logic model of really becoming a student-centered, focused district. That is our aim and our goal is to be student-centered and focused. And that's what UDL will help us get there in a lot of ways for our staff and for ourselves.
And to, I think, Cinda's point and your point, to meld the two together, I think what you want to do is marry the language. So again, it's all about, how you define things and to make sure that it kind of matches up with how you're delivering it. So, because we looked at a very high level to it, the theory of delivering that education with, technology and measurement, but using what's, UDL, nomenclature into that document might just create that, that connection that, especially as people come in and out of the district, it resonates. So I think that, it may not be a rebuilding of it, maybe just a tweaking of it to just kind of marry it together with what, how you're defining your initiatives. So something to consider. So, yeah, Brandy, absolutely.
Just one more thing really quick.
Of course.
And it's actually funny. I was writing it as you were saying it before you even said it. So we were obviously thinking along the same lines. But I think one thing to reiterate is that over the years, I when I was in school, half of the challenges that we face today were not present then. Something as simple as a peanut allergy. When I was in school, I didn't know anybody with a peanut allergy, and that's one small thing on the whole big picture of challenges that administration and teachers face today that were not present when, at least not to my knowledge, when I was in school. Over the years, things continue to change. And I think as a district, you mentioned bravery, and I think that teachers have what in our mind is a job to actually teach and reach our children. But outside of just educating our children with the textbook knowledge, there's a whole other component of reaching that child as well. And I think the one thing about our district that I'm super proud of is that we truly want to reach every child, hence the reason why UDL is even a topic of discussion. I think from my part of the board, I would ask that you guys continue to be brave. Challenge yourself to ask, what are we doing right? But more importantly, where are there rooms for improvement? Where are there opportunities for growth? So that we can continue to focus on our children. And while it might not be necessarily comfortable for everybody, keep that focus on the students and really reaching them, not just teaching them, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on August Academy? I just wanted to thank you for inviting me. This is the first time the board chair has ever been asked, and I hope it becomes a standing tradition. What I really covered was what we do. I think teachers, look at the board as a thing. We are just the board and the governing body, and putting it into perspective. What we do, the budgets, the working with the unions to negotiate contracts, collaboration with administration, really defining that we're lay people. That are here all for the same purpose, but from a different place. Except for Naomi, of course, who's also an educator. And I did call you the ringer there too. It's so it's just, having that perspective, really we're parents, but we're all taxpayers. And we're looking at it from that way. I did pull up our code of ethics that we sign every year, and our guiding principles. And the first item that we commit to is students, and the second is the taxpayer. So knowing that we do strike that balance, but really being able to to take it from the outside in and from the inside out, because we have that luxury. But really looking at that with the teachers, and knowing what we do, and that we appreciate what they do, and that we are in awe of what they accomplish in a classroom every day. So that was kind of what we covered in my part of it. Definitely not about UDL. I'm not qualified to even introduce the concept. So it was about how we will support UDL in accomplishing the district's goals, because we believe in what administration is doing. So without even getting this presentation, we have the right people in place to deliver the outcomes we're looking for. So that's really kind of where that talking point came from. So thank you for having me. And again, I hope the board chair stays as an agenda item for future years, and whoever that might be. So thank you. And on that, we will go on to the housekeeping portion of our program, which is item number 8, which is the approval of August 19th and August 26th minutes. So we'll start with the 19th. I will entertain a motion made by Cinda, seconded by Andy. Are there any edits to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of August 19th signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Did you say aye?
No.
You're at the 19th, not the 26th. Yeah. So you're aye. Okay. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. And then I will entertain a motion to accept the August 26th minutes made by Naomi, seconded by Andy. Any edits to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Abstain? 1. The motion carries 4-0-1 with board member Nunez abstaining. We are on to consent with John.
Thank you. Tonight we have 3 nominations, and they are all at the middle school. We have Kyle Adams, Family and Consumer Science teacher at Merrimack Middle School. Laura King, math teacher, Merrimack Middle School. And Kelly Trepany, social studies teacher, Merrimack Middle School.
Cinda?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded by Andy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. Item number 10, other. First is correspondence. All of us at this table did get correspondence from a constituent regarding LGBT content questions. I offered my package to the district to get so they understand the genesis of the request or the information they just wanted to share with us. It wasn't really anything that we had to respond to. And so we are all in receipt of that. And then I did get another email from parents who asked about updating forms to be more family-centric, regardless of family design. So those were my 2 items of correspondence, ours and the one I just got. Are there any other pieces of correspondence to share with the board? Okay. Are there comments from the board? I did say the thank you for the back to school from the Merrimack Police Department for the safety. Again, buses are out there, kids are out there. Please be careful driving. We have 180 days. We'd like them to all be the best possible days we can present. And then, let's see, I wrote something down. Whoops. And I just wanted to say that thank you for staying up through August Academy and all your work this summer. A successful first day of school, which couldn't have happened without all that work, and putting the year off on the right foot for the new administrative team. So I wish you all the best for a new school year. And Mark, I think you had your hand up as well.
Thank you for that. It was a very good first day of school. We're thrilled to have students back. That's really where it happens. So kind of in light of what we've been talking about tonight, about just trying to think of ways to continue to communicate with our teachers and parents and the larger community, and knowing that pretty soon, very soon, we'll be in a budget season, thought that we might try to do a little forecasting about upcoming budget meetings and at least some items that might be on future agendas, with the idea that if folks in the public have a little bit of prior knowledge, they might find something of particular interest to them and pay particular attention on TV, or plan to maybe be here to provide comment, because I know that it's always been the board's wish at all seasons, but particularly the budget season, to get feedback. And so one of the things that we're going to try to do is to forecast a little bit. So just a sample of some upcoming board meeting topics that might be of particular interest to the public. So on September 16th, as I mentioned, we are going to have a presentation by Principal Sharon Putney about graduation rate and the complexity of that. It's not as easy to decipher as one might think, though it ends up being just a number. There's quite a bit more to it, and so Sharon Putney is going to speak about that. And also, we're going to continue the dialogue about student outcomes. We started that tonight. Board Member Guglielmi asked about a standing agenda item, and I think that's great, and for UDL, and I think that we will continue to do that. Also, want to talk about how homework fits into the larger schema of student outcomes, and help to continue to clarify that. On October 7th, we are going to talk a little bit about information about school rankings, because for some people, as Board Member Nunez said, that is one of the primary means to determine effectiveness. And while it's true that that is one means, like we say about students, it's not the only means. And so if you judge a student by how they do on their SATs but ignore other factors, you're not really understanding the fullness. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about how school rankings are determined, just because I think it's helpful, and it certainly is an issue that some people might be thinking about. Also on October 7th, our plan is to have the Planning and Building Committee recommendations to the school board, particularly concerning the combined SAU Student Services building and related property use. On October 21st, an initial sharing with the board on the capital improvement plan. And then some conversation about requirements and philosophy around class size and student-teacher ratios. There are some folks who think maybe you could have 30 or 35 students in a class. There are some state regs that make that not possible. And then it's also important to talk about the philosophy around class size that we have had in this district for a long time, that I think we should discuss, and I would say continue to support that philosophy. But that's just my opinion, but we're going to have a conversation about that. And then also, if we have it, on November 4th, to talk about guaranteed maximum rate, if known, at that time, and the budget impact. And then also a conversation about unfunded mandates and budget impact, because the truth of the matter is, whether we talk about it or not, there are things that we are required to do by the state of New Hampshire, for which the state of New Hampshire provides no financial support. And that is an impact that we can't say no to. And so I don't think that it's helpful to go into a budget season and not have people understand what those are. This isn't about blaming. It's about stating a fact and how that fact impacts planning that we have to do in development of a budget. So, just a way to forecast for some folks what might be coming up, and if people are interested, they always welcome. If we haven't proven anything tonight, I think it's that we're willing to talk about a lot of things, and if we can be respectful about it too, that's even better. But that's the goal.
Excellent. Thank you. And you'll be able to post that on our district Facebook page?
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you. So on to, if there's no other comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to item number 11. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none. Item number 12, committee reports. Are there any committee reports to come before the board? Andy?
So as Mark in sort of previewed, Planning and Building met last week, and Mark and Matt both attended the Planning and Building. It was their first meeting in quite a while, and they did have quorum, which was interesting. The real takeaway and what you're going to hear when they come to the upcoming meeting is to take a bit of a step back from the let's pick this building design, to take more of a holistic look at the campus area around the high school and where the current buildings are, where the land is, and what we should do in a perfect world. None of the buildings exist, but we had to put one someplace, or what the design would be, what would it be? They're going to come with some ideas on how we look holistically at that site before we do anything, essentially. So I don't want to say much more than that because I want Rich and the rest of the team to be able to dictate and describe what that is. But I think it'll be a very different approach than what we've seen from Planning Building in the past. So.
Sounds good. Thank you. Is there any other committee reports? Seeing none, we will close committee reports. There's no public, so we will close public comments on agenda items. We will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Andy, seconded by Brandy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you and good night.